my friend. Today we're going to be doing melody writing. So if you are looking to write music, this is the spot for you. It's morning here, so I'm still having my coffee. Long story short, got a couple staves on the board. What we're going to do is talk about how to plot notes, what their durations are, how to visualize the circle fifth, and after you have like a little bitty melody line, how to like make heads or tail with it. One thing that's really cool about writing music that I've noticed, I've never been like the most proficient songwriter. However, I do like melodies. They're in my head all day long. So the idea is if you could get them out of your head and put them on your instrument of choice or la 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 la, sing them out loud, it really makes a big difference. What I wanted to do is go over to the mirror image on this computer and show a little melody and see if we could come up with something fun.
登記投保，保障健康；登記投保，保障家人嘅健康。而家新嘅法律令健康保險更容易負擔，每位客戶當中有4位可以揾到每個月低於10蚊美金嘅健康保險計劃。打電話1800-318-2596。
And it talks about a very hard part in American history or just world history, just taking land from another people. But here we are today. What I would say is Aloha Oi is a wonderful song to express the love of the island. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. Watch a couple artists do it. Today we're just going to plot a couple notes on there and show you how those notes can influence our melody writing. Now, what we saw in there were a couple different durations of notes. We have our whole note, which has 4 beats. And from that, we're going to discern what all the rest of these notes are. So here, we're going to throw up our 4/4, and then you don't necessarily need to keep the time signature going through your stave, but I would definitely say to put your key signature, so you know where you're at. This is in the key of G, so we're going to put our sharp on the F line. And if you're not familiar with how to see a stave and know where the notes are, the treble clef is actually called the G clef, which means when we draw this treble clef, starting with a circle, 360, going around, then we do a lowercase l, that lowercase l circles back on itself, and then we do a lowercase j on the side or through the middle, really doesn't matter. The whole idea is when you get rid of this lowercase l, you get a G note. That is supposed to look like a lowercase g in the alphabet. So when you see that, every single note that you see on this line is going to be the G line. Another really amazing note to know besides the second line from the bottom is this. Underneath the treble clef or the bass clef, you can have lines which are called ledger lines, which go below and they go above. Meaning, if you see a note that's on here, like this eighth note, you would go, oh, cool, that's a C, and it's an eighth note, and it lasts for 0.5 or half of a beat. So when we're talking about that, this is a whole note in 4/4. It's worth the whole measure. And when we're talking about a measure, we're simply talking about a note that falls within a bar or a beam. Now, frankly, there should be like 4 measures per stave. That's a good way to measure it or balance it, but that's not always the rule of thumb. It's just a good idea for spacing things out. This first measure actually isn't a measure. It's called an anacruxis, or a pickup note. The pickup note we have in this song, Aloha Oi, is going to be starting on the D, because we're going to have it right below, and the duration it has is a quarter, which means we're going to fill in that note head, put our stem on the right, and go up. The next notes and phrasing we have is more of a long full note. It has a quarter, half note, dotted half note. So to be able to do those and go from our D, go to our E, and then go to our G, we put our circles on here representing our half notes. And if you're following along, we put our stem on the right always when our stems are going up. And when our stems are going down, they go on the left side. Just kind of think of like having a note like this and then turning it in a circle. When you turn it in a circle, that stem stays on the outside there. It just looks weird. It just looks weird. So the whole concept is the only time you're going to see notes that look different are when you have minor seconds. And a minor second is a note that touches another note. When we play those together on the piano, you'll hear something like that. Those two notes, when we play them together, will definitely have that little dissonance there, all right? So when we're trying to see our note notation, this is a whole note, and then we break it. I'm gonna break it down. We got half notes. The next notes we hit are going to be quarter notes. There are 4 of them. And the really big thing that we need to see here is after our half notes, pramya, which have 2 beats, because 2 plus 2 equals, 4. Then we go to filling in our note head, Notenkoffen. So once we see our Notenkoffen here filled in, Stein, we're going to put the stem on the right side. These are our quarters. So we have a beat of a 1 here, which is the reason why this is called an anacruxis, or a pickup note, or an intro measure. It actually isn't a full measure, so it's not considered as such. It's just marked off by a bar, so we know where we're at. So we would, in 4/4, count the tree and go 1, 2, 3, quarter. Or, since the first word that's on here is for aloha, we would say 1, 2, 3. Aloha. Those are our 2 notes, but they are devoid of those stems. When you do a stem, you kind of want to go up 2 lines or 2 spaces. It's a rule of thumb. You're going to get really used to drawing your own notes, but the process is just doing it. Our next notes that come after our quarter notes are called eighth notes. Now, because there are 2 half notes in a whole, and there are 2 quarter notes in a half, that means, deduction, there are 2 eighth notes. Eighth notes, because we are after our quarter, the note head is filled in, and then they have a quaver or a flag. An individual eighth note, you will see, it'll look like this, it'll have one of those. I'm not the best drawer, but that's kind of there. Most of the time, though, you're going to see these eighth notes not just with a single quaver or a flag, but they're going to beam it together. That means we're going to count these as individual eighth notes. It's still 1 eighth note and then another eighth note. But when we count them, we say 1 and. When we count quarter notes, the whole idea is to be able to hear that there are 4 beats in a whole note. When we go to half notes, there are 2. And when we go to quarter notes, there are 4 of them, right? So a whole note actually is 1. 1. You hear how it has the whole duration? When you play it on a piano or something, you hear... So when we go over here, we see that our eighth notes can be beamed together and that we fill in our note. Get a little sloppy here with my notation. After our eighth notes, they just double in form, which means we're going to take this integer and we're going to make it double its size, right? So our 8 plus 8 is 16. 16 is 32. 32 is 64, so on and so forth. The thing I want to show you here is when we take this 16th note and we put our 8th note right here, boom, we're going to take another set of 8th notes and put it right in between those. So we still have one and, but now instead of having just one and, two and, three and, four and, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. When we see this, we still have one and, but in betwixt we have e, So the feeling of doing these would be like 1 and 2 and 3 and these are eighth notes. Then 1 e and 2 e and 3 e and 4 e and. Helps us to express melodic movement. So if we hear something like da da na 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 da 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 ha 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 ha. The notes that weren't clapped or sung or pontificated are rests. So each one of these has an equal and opposite value that allows you to just hear these notes with the lack of frequency or tone. There's still a rhythm or a percussive aspect to it because it's the lack of tone. But when we see all of these as having the same basic principles, we notice that 1 beam is for eighth notes, 2 beam is for 16th, 3 beams is going to be for my 32nd notes, so on and so forth. And then when we do a 64th note, you betcha, we're just going to have our 4 beams. Now you notice that I kind of got rid of filling in my note head. It takes a while, so I'm just getting lazy. However, you should, as practice. The way that I wrote these here is how you would mark out on a stave for the percussion clef. It makes a lot more sense rather than writing full circles of notes and filling them in because they don't have tonal value. Just to put them on the staff for the percussion and then show that through an X or a dot or a stave line slash. Cool. So we know how to make our different notes now all the way up to, you can keep going infinitum, I guess. I mean, at a certain point when you put like 64th, 128th, 300, you're just going to start hearing, instead of hearing ha, 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 or ha, you're just going to hear ha. That's what happens when you stop or you go fast and those rests just smoosh together and you condense that. It just turns into a solid beam or a pitch. Cool. So along with this notation, we have 2 concepts. One, they're called rest, and the other concept is called a dot or a double dot. These are so you can add a little bit more time or take away a little bit of time. When we have a whole rest, the whole rest has a top hat looking thing-a-ding. You're going to have a line and then the fill-in. Now for this, it's always going to be on the middle line for you. Every so often you'll find something which is a little different, but generally they're like that. So this one is a whole rest. And then for a half rest, you just flip that box upside down. You do the same thing. I tell some of my younger students, just act like it's a magic hat. You put 4 rests in here. When you turn upside down, it drops 2 of those rests out. That's, I don't know, a good way to do it. I'm not really into mechanisms like every good boy does fine or blah, 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 face. All cows eat grass. I just learn the lines. That's what it is, the landmark series. When we go to quarters here, a quarter note rest, I'm not the best at these, but they always end up looking like 3s for me. But it kind of looks something like that. You know, some of them will be a little straighter. Some of them will be a little faster. The one that I have on most of my boards looks like this. I think that'll work if you want to keep it like that. That's worth 1 beat. So if you see quarter, 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 and then this, you're seeing rest. Rest. That's how music works. So when we go to our 8th note rest has a little ball, just like our 8th, and 1 beam, just like its beam. When you go to 16ths, it has the same mechanism, except for doing 1, you do 2. Why? There are 2 beams on a 16th note. When we go to 32nd, 64th, so on, so forth. Ta-da! And if you've never seen this, it's confusing. But we use these in order to practice. If you are freshly new to this, take this whole thing, write it down. This is your family tree of notation and durations. And when you see these, the next concept is the hard one. It's a really super stinky hard one. Whenever you see a dot after a note, it adds a value to that note. Meaning, if we had a whole note and we put a dot after it, the whole note in the measure of 4/4 is worth 4 beats. Half of 4 is 2. A dotted whole note is worth 6 beats. Will you have a dotted half note in a piece of music that's in 4? No, you will not. But it does work in some cases if you want to just move out and you would have a double dotted note, which means you would add not just 2, but 4 to that 4 to get 8. That means you've got this like bereave, how would I explain that in the Western ear? You'd have a double marking. Those notes in notation actually look like this. Has a whole note and it puts bars above it. That allows you to know that it's going to go for double the amount that it is. So that's a lot of information. I'm going to put this one off to the side because it is valid to know double whole tone or a whole note. And then what we're talking about here is if you take a half note which has a duration of 2 beats, meaning it's 2 plus 2 is 4. Half of 2 is 1, so a dotted half note is worth 3 beats. And the reason why we do this is there are only so many different mechanisms we can do for music which follow something called tempo or rhythm. The notations that we put in there are consistent utilizing the quarter. When we do the quarter note, it is the foundation, which is why when you talk to musicians, they're like, yeah, I count. I tap my foot. I have some sort of click tracker or something when I'm practicing. So you can stay kind of on some sort of regiment of beat notation. So when you are playing something that's a little fast or allegro or something that's moderate in about 80 beats per minute, you find yourself being able to play these rhythms that are in there. The whole idea is practice makes perfect. The more time you put on these ideas and concepts and try to utilize them, like today's concept, writing a little melody line or analyzing one from Aloha Oi, maybe just the first measure, you will find that writing these things out will make you more proficient in many different facets, but the 3 that are the most important is understanding of the basics of music foundation, what notes and their durations are, how to utilize them on a staff so it gives you landmark series like knowing this is the G note, knowing that that C we aforementioned is on the first ledger line. Also making like ideas and patterns work, like we're going to talk about something called the circle fifths. Every key has a relative major and a minor. Well, when you share those, you can look at the bottom line of the treble clef being the E. Well, E minor is the relative minor of G. G is the bottom line of the bass clef. There are certain mechanisms you can do over and over and over, and when you start drawing notes, you will start seeing the individual notes are melodies. When you have stacked notation, that is what basically is music concepts. These are progressions. They are stacked notes that are stacked in thirds. These thirds are based off of minor seconds and major seconds. So all music is kind of like math, and once you get over, there are only so many little bitty concepts in the beginning. Once you got that concept, the sky's the limit. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this because we do it on everything, but if we went from a C to a C sharp, we would have a minor second, the smallest distance in the Western ear. An addition of a minor second plus a minor second equals a major second. When we keep moving that portion, we get a minor third, major third, perfect fourth, augmented fourth, perfect fifth, augmented fifth. We could get a major sixth, a minor 7, a major 7, and then we have our octave again, or our P8. When we see these as being like a 5 that's flattened, can be called a flat 5 or a tritone or a 4 augmented, you start to realize that the 2 and the 3 and then the 6 and the 7 are called majors or minors. The 1, the 4, the 5, and the 8 are called primes or perfects. If you have 2 notes, you can't do it on a piano, but if you have like a ukulele and you're playing a G major, that note and your open note is exactly the same pitch. Therefore, that's called a perfect prime. Can't do that on a piano because you only really have one of each note. So when moving through these, we can see is having our scale position to know to go up a major 6, and that gives you the relative minor for every key. When we learn on a piano different fingerings for these triads, which are based off of harmonies, which are called dyads, we find ourselves using the same types of fingerings. So if our fingerings are used to going 1 to 5, 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 all chords look exactly the same except for B flat, which goes to a black key to a white key, and then when you go to the B, you go to the black key. The whole concept is if you can remember your perfect fifth, then you get to choose where your major third or your minor third is. The only other chords would have diminished where you flatten both the 3 and the 5. So when building chords and knowing what a C major is compared to a C minor or a C diminish, you will have the opportunity to go through these and see that the markings that we work on change the sonority or the function of that key. Ow! So today, what we're going to do is show you that dot. Let me see if I can get rid of that right there. That dotted half note is going to help us in a second here. We're going to be putting a half note in on the C. The C is above the B line, so I'm going to put my stem down and dot it. That means we're going to say 1, 2, 3, quarter, half, half, dotted half note. It just so works out when you say the names of these functions, it helps you space it out. If you go, and you know exactly how to hold 3 beats, great. If not, say dotted half note, even though it subdivides it into something called like a triplet or a tuplet, tot, 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 you are still getting the full duration of that dotted half note. Therefore, kind of works. At the end of here, you can see that we've got 3 beats, but there are 4 beats in a measure, so we need to return back to our E, and that E is a quarter note because that fills out the rest of the value of this measure. Goes without saying, if you do not have a complete measure, that measure is called an incomplete measure, which means there needs to be some sort of notation like a rest or another grace note to fill out that form. The next 2 notes we have are a D and a G, and they are both half notes, so right below here, right above there. Notice how we have a parallel theme going, but we move down our note. Super groovy to notice that. When we go up here, neither one of these need anything else because they are half notes and there were 2 beats. And then our last measure finishes what you would call the antecedent. This whole thing comes over the top and the feeling is when we go to that B note and hold it out right here, it is a dotted half note, much like this one, but we're moving down in form. Remember, you always put your dots on the right hand. It will be the opposite of where you put your stem for the down notes, and it will be on the same side for your stems that go up. Now, instead of just doing a quarter note here, we know that an eighth note can fit inside of a quarter note. So rather than keeping the melody, which you can, the artist or the arranger decided to go which is great because it gives us more to look at, more to do. It's both on the same note, so we're going to put that G right here. We're going to put another G right next to it, and then we're going to put our stems up and connect our beam. Because they are eighth notes, we want to fill that in, and we're done with that measure. When we can see our movement here, we know what this song feels like, but I'm just going to put a little bit of dynamic marking here for MP, mezzo piano, which means medium soft. Piano means soft whenever playing any instrument. You have a series of different dynamics ranging from like quadruple, like super ridiculously quiet. We've got sort of quiet, pianissimo, quiet, piano. Let's see here, mezzo forte, forte, fortissimo, fortissimo. I mean, you can see where we're going with this. If I did this, we would have. You could barely hear it because the way you'll be playing is just a little bit louder than where you were before until you get to the medium loud. Then when you get to forte, it's almost like you're a little loud. Fortissimo's too loud, and then fortissimo's way loud. It's like you're screaming or something. Fake Captain Beefheart or Zappa. Okay, that's our first line there. The second line that we're doing here is just a movement of our tones. Now, the reason why it's interesting on here is these kind of want to be blended together, so I'm going to put a little bitty tie there. Whenever we use that marking, it's called a legato marking. The legato marking itself allows us to connect two notes and make it long and flowing. Ta-da. So, was there a reason to do that? No, you could have put that as a quarter note because you wouldn't have a space. What else could be interesting here? By the way, rests can be dotted as well. If you have a quarter note and it's worth one beat and you put a dotted rest, dotted quarter note rest, it will have one beat plus a half. The next beat we're going to have here is going to be a dotted quarter. This one is a full measure. No need to do anything other here. We're going to be doing this on the F. So we're going to put in our quarter, fill in the note head, throw our stem, and dot our quarter. After that, we're going to be moving to an eighth and then to a quarter note again. Our eighth is going to be a quick line down to the E. Remember, this one is an A, so we fill in the note head and put a little flag or a quaver there to represent as such. The next two notes are going to be up in step, which is wonderful because that's really what we're looking for. We're going to be going back up here to our quarter. And then we're going to go up to another note right above it, which is going to land, I think, on the G line. Is that right? Yeah. And then just to be sure, we're going to count this out. 1 plus 1, so 1.5 plus half. That's 2 beats together. 3, 4. Cool. That's our measure. Draw our bar line to separate the two different passages. The only time you're going to see something strange as far as those bar markings is when you're at the beginning, at the end, or if you're trying to change the tempo or you're trying to change the key signature. Right now we're playing in the key of G. If I wanted to change to the key of F, I would put a double bar and then throw in the new key signature. I would also write up here F major, just to remind myself. These are like some interesting things that I do. You don't have to do these when you're writing out. However, in the next line that I would go to, we could transpose if you want, but it might be a little bit too much. The next two lines, just to finish this up. The next line we go to is going to continue on with the D7, and then it's going to play A, A, B, C. So we have A, B, C. Again, if you know that this is the G line, then you can figure out where all the other notes are. G, A, B, C, D, E, F is the top line. G is above. A would be our first ledger. B is in between. Double ledger line is our other C. So a great landmark system to know is that our first ledger line is a C, and then our second one is a C. Cool? The reason being is C's alternate spaces, and they alternate lines. C is right here on a space, then a line. Then when we go up all the way into our way high voicings, you will find that the notes up there follow that same suit. Cool. These are all quarter notes, so we need to fill in our note head. Diartes, herites, yay. Up, 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 down. The reason why I did it up on the B, you could do it either way. The middle line of any clef can have a stem going up or down. When you're doing part writing for multiple voices like soprano, alto, bass, or tenor rather, baritone, or for 4-part, SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, you can have a note like on the middle line, which is a B, that has a stem up and down because you might be going through a note, two voices are reading one stave, like the altos and the sopranos. After this line, we're going to throw down our bar. We're going to put in a nice, big, healthy, what is that, a B? Yeah. And the B is a whole note. I'm just going to draw it as such and end the measure because it's worth 4 beats. And then we're going to end it on just this and go down to our G. I know this feels kind of weird to end the concept. We have a dotted half note. And then we'll have our pickup note, but we're not going to go any further in this because I just want to move on to a different subject. This pickup note will attach to another measure down here. And again. These concepts are phrases. These phrases work within a period. So the whole period of this thing would be aloha oi, aloha oi ke ona hana hou ni ka. Lipo. When it goes down to here, lipo. That's our last kind of feeling, and then everything else here is going to be the response to this. I gotta say, this is a great way to put staff out. Write down notation, look at the different types of notes you can use, and then utilize them over on the stave. So for the rest of what we're doing here, let's just pick a quick key. We can get rid of this. Let's pick a key signature, and then let's utilize some of these notes. Maybe we could come up with something fun really quick in the remaining time we have. How about we pick the key of F? 1 sharp. We're going to move to 1 flat. So here's where the fun part for me comes in. I hope you enjoyed this as well. When we were just playing Aloha Oi, we were playing not in the key of C, which has no sharps and flats, meaning you wouldn't put any key signature on the stave at all. You would just leave it empty, and that lets us know it's either in the key of C major or it's relative minor, A minor. If we had that 1 sharp, we would either be in the key of G major or we would be in the key of E minor. If we keep going, we are adding on notation in 5s, which is why this delicate dandelion is called a perfect 5th. C to G, C, D, E, F, G, G, A, B, C, D, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. In fact, you can keep going, although they become hypothetical keys, like C when we go C, D, E, F, G becomes G sharp. Well, I would much rather call G sharp A flat. Sometimes I'll even call C sharp D flat. I'll call her F sharp G flat, and I'll call B C flat. Because essentially, they are. If we look at the piano, we'll notice that a C note, when we go directly below it, a minor second, even on the stave, it kind of jumps there, but anywhere else, you'll see how they're right next to each other. They're those 2 notes that touch each other that we were talking about. And whenever you have any notes that are touching each other, the secondary note will go to the right side so your eye can see it. So you know that's where it's going to blend, regardless of where the note goes. If you have a note that goes like this, you'll have it going right through that. Yay. And I think it might even show that on the piano. Does it? Not really. Anyway, when we're playing through these chords, you can see how those half steps are super important, seeing that C major has no sharps and flats. When we keep moving on our circle, you can keep going to A flat. Before that is our E flat. Then we have a B flat and an F. This essentially is what we call the circle of 5ths or the circle of 4ths. When we go this way, we are counting in 5s, and these are all sharp keys. You would have C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, G major, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, D major, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, A major, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. What I've done is I've gone from having no sharps to adding 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7. There are 7 keys that have sharps. There are 7 keys that have flats. F has 1 flat. If you can memorize that F has 1 flat and there are 7 notes in a scale, and then you take one of those notes away because there's only 1 flat in the key of F. That flat in the key of F is B flat. Oh, you can't even see that, can you? That flat in the key of F is B flat. In the key of B flat, there's 2 flats, B flat and E flat. In the key of E flat, there's 3, B flat, E flat, A flat. In the key of D flat, there's 4, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. It's the same way we do it with this. If you point to A, you can go, oh, the first sharp we had in the key of G was F sharp. Or you can do this and keep going that way. F sharp, C sharp, G sharp. E is also a D. E flat is E double flat is a D. So, long story short, you can kind of look at the circle of 5ths, and when you draw it 400 million times, or you explain it a couple of trillion times, if you just look at it and draw it maybe 50, 60 times, you'll get it. These things start to be burnt into your memory bank, and you recall this while you're playing or thinking or seeing. I was trying to explain this the other day. When I utilize music foundations to play music, it is a representative of the time and effort that I've put in the past. When I'm playing, I'm not going, what's a major scale? I'm not thinking about how do I play this progression. The notes, the chords, the melodies, the ideas are there because I've spent 20,000 hours on different instruments playing different combinations of progressions and notes, scales, modes, and then the boring stuff, which is quite literally working on these, going... Being able to play all your major keys, knowing all your minor keys, and then being able to formulate different melodies from knowing your chord structures for all your keys is really where it's at. Advanced musical theory would allow you to do compositions where you do what we're doing today, just writing a couple notes in form, and then seeing what chords fit underneath those. We're doing a very simplified version, but it does do the same kind of things composers in the beginning are looking for. No big leaps and bounds. Try to move all of your music in steps so you're not having weird irrational jumps. Try to stay with triads that have consistent consonants rather than doing like a minor six. When you do stuff like this, you get dissonances. You might think that sounds great, but it feels weird. So do tritones, especially when you do them together. So what we try to do is try to move in step. Rather than going... feel a little disjunct, and what we really want to do is have music which is very conjunct. So, conjunctive. This is our circle of fifths and our circle of fourths. It talks about how to move around the fretboard. Talks about how to move around the piano. And when you start seeing all music are just these 12 notes, chromatic scale, along with 7 notes that make up defined intervals that allow us to put them together in harmonies called dyads, and then work those 2 sets of dyads as a chord, otherwise known as a triad, which is based off of something called tertiary harmony. These ideas are what we use to formulate different melodies. So we're going to do this one in the key of F. F has 1 flat. It's the B flat, so we need to find that on each one of our lines. And here, let's see if we could... let's do this in the bass clef. So our bass clef is on the F line, G, A, B. Whenever we see this flat, we are talking about the key of D minor or F major, because they are relative major and minor. When you go 4 notes away on the circle, you find yourself at your relative major and minor. Okay, without further ado, let's erase this nonsense. Let's come up with a construct. Now, if you are starting from scratch on a song and you do not have an idea of what you're wanting to do, there are some common ideologies that you can follow. 1, start off with the tonic. If you start off with the tonic, you can move anywhere from there. The whole idea is you would be following a little beauty or a gem called the major or the minor harmonic progression. One of the cool things about doing this all the time is you start seeing generalities, which is lots of fun. But more importantly, you start seeing function behind this. The chords we have in a key are insanely similar. You might not see that, but you're only really dealing with 3 notes in a triad, 2 for a dyad, and there's 7 notes completely. If you stay within the diatonic key structure, this is what we're talking about. The notes that we use often would be just the notes that sound good and feel good in succession. Let me see if I can pull up this little thing so I can get it right for us. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're lurking in the background and you have any questions or comments, put them in this comment section. I'd love to get to them. If none of this makes sense, of course, ask me questions. That's the whole reason why we're here. The reason why I'm putting these silly little dots is to differentiate. Ooh, that's a hard word. Between the 2 and the 4 and the 5 and the 7, and then going to the 1. It feels good. Cool. Now, you don't have to follow this per se, but when you do, let's see if I can move that one. I need to go all the way down there. This one's going to go up to 6. And this is not always the way you have to do this, but this is a great way to look at music. So if you're doing something like, I don't know, let me look at the piano here really quick. If you're doing something like, that's a little weird. How about F, C, D minor, B flat? Yeah, that would work. So if we're in the key of F, we'd have F major, 1 chord, to the 5 chord, to the 6 chord, to the 4 chord. When we look up at the major harmonic progression, we could go, oh, cool. We were playing a 1 chord. When I find myself in 5 chord, times of trouble, 6 chord. Mother Mary comes to me. And then we go to the 4 chord. This would be a representation of kind of counter. It went from the 1 to the 5. Now, that concept is called a cadence. When you go from a 1 to a 5, generally it's called a PAC or a IPAC, a perfect authentic cadence or an imperfect authentic cadence. The difference between the two of those is the perfect authentic cadence has a root note of the key. So since we're playing F, a perfect authentic cadence would have had F to our C, and then we used the root note from both of those. If we played F major in, let's say, an inversion, and we did something like this, we had our... this would be imperfect because I'm not really using the F note as the foundation of the chord. It's a little different. So that's how I kind of use the major and minor harmonic progression. The minor is a little bit different, but it works on the same basis. I'm going to leave this up so you can look at it while we're performing this and trying to write some different types of notes here. Let's see here. Let's go over to the piano again. See if we can come up with something kind of fun. Why don't we? Well, I find myself. Now I got the Beatles tune in my head. All right, let's come up with something. Let's move this to the side too so we can see whatever we write out. And let's get the foot pedal if we could. How about we start off with something like just a dyad, our harmony of F and A. Maybe descending in step. Don't want to keep it too the same. Remember there's a B flat in here. A little boring. How about just something like F, E, D, F, G minor, E, or C? It could be an inversion. You can do it with an inversion. How about a melody line? Over the top of this. Nah, no flats or accidentals. To nursery rhyme. Ooh, that could be a moving line. Reminiscent. Then over the top of maybe our G minor. Something involving these notes, you know, just right in the middle, has our F, has our 4 chord, has our relative minor. Let's work with that. Let's start off with cool, just that notation right there. This is what we call a static phrasing. But since we don't really know where we're going to be going with this, it might change over time. So the note I was just playing was a C over the top. It's the 5. So we've got a note, a note, a note, and then a note. All 4 of these are eighth notes. And because they're above the B line, we're going to draw our stem down, 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 down. And this pen is going. I need a new pen. Just because they're below that line, I'm going to put my stem down. Ooh, nice healthy marker. And remember, when you do this, you don't have to do straight lines. I like to see these as being like a little bit longer. So each significant line could go a little bit further, and then you draw a little at an angle. How fun. When we do this, this has the beginning, but there were more notes there, weren't there? We had more eighth notes put together, except we kind of cut off on that last one. So we've got eighth note string, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then we're going to make a quick eighth note rest on the and of the 4. That concludes our first measure. Dot, 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 dot. And it feels like this. Cool. The next measure we can do can continue that theme or motif Oh, gee golly. We call these a motif because you will find centralized themes happening all over your cadences. Generally, when you have an idea, it has this marking over the top of it. That just means that you're talking about some sort of phrase. This phrase can be seen in most different musics when you analyze it. So if you ever wanted to go to, like, let's say Fur-Elise or Mozart or Bach, Mendelssohn, Beethoven, anything that's kind of classical would be find a sonata and listen to that sonata, and you'll be experiencing something called sonata form, which is an amazing way to do a little music analyzation. Listen to music from artists who have gone through the process of listening to all the greats, whether they lived in the 1800s or they live down the block from you right now. Everybody does music analysis because by critiquing other people's music or other artists or composers' music, you get an understanding for the foundation, and then you get ideas that are based off of wanting to change that or copy that, either way. Cool. Our next lines after our eighth, we still have an eighth. This time, I think that we're just going to complete those and have our melody line move, or else it's going to be what we were just calling a static foundation. Dot, 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 dot. Gets super annoying after a while. So here, we can do this and have some fun with it. We might go back and put some markings in it. Let's put another eighth. Fill these out. I'm not that great at filling out my notes. Eighth, and then how about we move this? Let's move it up to a, what was that, a D? And then an E. A little clearer for us. That completes it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That is such a busy line, and tell you what, I'm not really even a fan of it. It's a little static right now. It feels as if we're going da 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 da. But hopefully the melody line changes from there. We can put some chords underneath. We're going to keep that at our E, and then we're going to go up to our F. And remember, there is no need to mark out any of these B lines on here as being our B flat because it is in the key signature. And then these two are still together. They have their lines going down. There's their cross line. And just to simplify, maybe we could fill out something later. Let's just fill out this with another rest for 1 and 2. And then for the rest of our measure, let's just use some of our foundation. Why not? We got it over there. Can anybody remember what that one is without me saying it out loud? What is our rest, which has a top hat, which is upside down? If you refer over here, you'll see that it is our secondary one, which is our half rest. That closes out that measure, and then we're going to go down to the next measure. The next measure being just the finalization. I might actually just want to move this over so I can finish it out right here. If you've got a good computer writing program like Finale or Dulcro, it'll do it for you, which is kind of cool. But then again, it's also good to be able to write it. Here, let's just leave a whole note rest and then maybe fill this in with something later. Also, I like to do a lot of comping, so the left hand would be probably doing something. If there's a bass line, we'll put it down there. This right here would just be our first measure. Let's work with that and show what the melody could look like over the top of this. The first line that we did had an F, and it had a harmony of that dyad. So the bass line is considered the F. We're going to draw this in, and then our top line is the A. Another thing I wanted to mention, since we're right here, don't be fooled with this bass clef and this treble clef, the divide. Hey, Jeff. How you doing, buddy? It's good to see you today. It's good to see you yesterday, too. Today we're just talking about part writing a little melody in the key of F. Doing eighth notes, it's something we call static, very boring in the beginning, and maybe it'll change towards the end. This is the good foundation, though. You could write stuff in like this. We're going to share the measure here. So we're going to put half notes for these groupings of eighths and half notes for these grouping of eighths and the eighth note rest. We're moving down in form, which is kind of cool. This one's staying static and this one's moving. I do believe that's the only saving grace for this melody at this point. And because these are half notes, I'm just going to write out my stem going down. They share the stem, so you can just put it through if you want. But the idea is, if you see one, you're going to see another. It's not common that you have a whole note above it unless it has a tie over the top or a slur. Cool. So that's going to go for our first point there. I am going to complete this phrasing. That's what the whole thing, da 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 da. Moving up in form, how about we put a little bit of dynamics? We're going to go from quiet to loud. So by the time you get to the end of your motif, this is your first motif, M-O-T-I-1. Here's your second motif, M-O-T-2. And then the ending of this is like your cadence mover. So the idea is the chords that are underneath these should stimulate the ear into hearing something which isn't static, which is our explanation for today, how to not be static. Happy New Year to you too, buddy. You have any big plans? We got some shrimp and I think a steak or something, but we're not big on celebrating anything, but I do like to barbecue, so when there's a reason. Let's see here. Our next chord, or next dyad at least, is going to be a D. Stacking these tertiarily, we're going to find ourselves with a D and F. We know that there's no F sharp in here, so that's a D minor, the beginning of a minor third. And then we're also going to be sharing this measure, again cutting it on the 3 and, 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, right here. We're going to be going up in form because if we kept going down, we would be continuing a cadence. And that might just have something like you can stay on the C. I just feel like going down and up, maybe it moves the melody. So we're going to be going right back up to the same thing we've had here. Boom, le boom. And again, because these are both being shared, we can put those. Relatively, we should also put our crescendo. You don't need to write it in, but if you want to, crescendo. There you go. And it goes from one point to another, so gradually get louder while you're doing that. Down here on the bass, you're doing the same thing, but if you don't want to have the same dynamic marking, you could just put the MP here, and then you could follow that along. If we put dots above each one of these notes, they become something called staccato. This is also a cute little way to get more individual notation. If we want it to be long, lovingly flowing, we would have. See how those are all connected, very long and flowing? Another way that we could do that and play that would be, rather than doing them together as notes, we could do them with a quick uplift. It gives it a detached feeling, and that's the whole purpose of staccato notes. in combination with these large, longer legato notes, you can have those staccato notes. If you wanted these to be long and flowing, you could connect these too. They're not a legato in the sense that it's tying the two together so they're long and flowing, or staccato so it's short and detached. These absolutely mean longer and more flowing. In fact, when you do these to different groups of dyads, they're not considered ties because a tie only goes to the same value notation, like F to F, D to D. Whenever you go from a note to another note, it's called a slur. So when we use these legatos, there are two types of legato markings, slurs or ties. Since we did it in one, we're going to do it with another. Hey! And then lastly, I think that we can wrap this up by just going back to our root. And when we have that, we have our F and our A. So we're going to mark out our half note on the F line, the A line, throw down our stem. And then lastly, let's try to use the last of this on this measure to do something other than just half notes. Half notes have seemed pretty, I don't know, static or pedantic to me right now. So let's go above our line. Let's throw ourselves out a good old-fashioned G, and you betcha there's a surgence of our first flat. This is our B flat because it's above the A line. And as I was alluding to earlier, don't be weirded out between this huge gap between the treble clef and the bass clef. There is not a big gap. The aforementioned example we had about having the first ledger line underneath the treble clef being something called the C note, that note on every instrument will always be middle C, every single time. The only time that you will not have that C, a part of your lowest, your middle C here, as a note called a C4, C1, C2, C3, C4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. When you have the middle C on an 88 key piano, you are talking about the middle C, C4, and it is always the first ledger line underneath the treble clef. The only time that that value changes in pitch is if you see one of these, which means to go up an octave, a voice above, or to go down an octave, voice below. But those aren't probably that common with the amount of music that you'll be reading or writing. But it's a good thing to know that you could write on the clef that looks like this, but then play it up higher in your mezzo range. So if we didn't want to do, and we wanted to do, you know, like in Fur-Elise when it's doing the, what is it? When it comes back in after that last passage, it goes something like. Rather than writing that melody line here and then going all the way up here to write that melody line, you can just put it here and put the voice above. Hope that made sense. And again, I know this is a lot of information, but that's kind of the reason why I do this. I don't know, 6,000 followers on the channel right now. Daily, there's 92 to 200 comments, blah, 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 likes, stuff like that. I would assume that 1% of the people that get on this channel are nerdy, geek out people like me that just like watching this to see what they can learn or comment on and be a part of. Really, I'm trying to build a nerdy music community, so if you are one of those persons and you're looking at doing this for the first time, this is a great place to be. I'm not a super aficionado. I'm still working on this myself, and I don't take myself too seriously. So it is lots of fun for me, and I hope it's fun for you as well. This C here, since we did that, now these are quarter notes. They need a stem. They're going to be going down, and there's no need to put in that the flat because it's in the key signature. Even though it's down here on the B line, we know that this space up here above the bass clef is that because this is a B, and then you have right above that B, you have a C. On the bass clef, when you have F, G, A, B, and C, the first ledger line above the bass clef is the exact same note as the first ledger line below the treble clef, meaning there isn't a difference in notation or pitch. You have the option when writing whether you would like to include the middle C or the B or the A even, or even some of the notes which you might have in a phrasing below. Charismatically, it happens more when you're writing for piano. One hand controls below with the F below, and one hand controls above that middle C. It's just a function of being comfortable playing on an 88 key. When you're playing an instrument like a guitar, the note that you hold for a C major, like nya, is the middle C. The lower C you play would be the C3. So your hands are actually doing a lot of things on guitar when you get down to it. On an ukulele, when you play, the middle C is our thickest string. Na, 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 na. So C5 would be the octave above. There's our diatonic scale. Chromatica. So, having said all this and looking at a little bit of music notation, and then feeling this out here in the lowest line, how about like back here, maybe we'll do this, these half notes, and because this could go on forever, how about just a dramatic end at a lower F major chord? And since we know that this is a G, the note right below it would be a F, A, C. When we do this, they're going to be splitting the whole value, right? So you're going to see that as having half notes, tones, and because we're at the end of the song, pretty much, I'm going to put a double beam. That signifies that I am done writing music on these staves and that the thought process or the period, the concept together is finished. Now, since these are both the same, I'm going to put both of these because they're both completing an idea. Cool. So this one could be like just a little ender, I guess, to a song. If we were to play it really super, super slow, it would have something that looks like this. When we play the other hand, fun. The left hand would have gone down to here, and we are enforcing an F. How about just an F since we're here? And we play it as an inversion. The lowest note I had here was the C. I'm going to keep that C right here, but then I'm going to build it up and put the F in here and put the A. This now is an inversion, which is fine. I'm going to throw that up there, and we're going to show the same thing. Now, are all of these measures complete? Yes, they are. Are there enough notes per measure to fill out the sound? There are. Is this static? It is. These notes can be changed. Maybe instead of having just straight notes that are just something like, it could be something moving up. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Or something like, you can do descending. Anything you really want. And here's what I got to say about this. It's just the foundation of a concept. This is a melody out of the multitude of different notes you could have chosen from any given key, putting them with any different type of duration, and then putting any type of chord core underneath. The whole reason for utilizing that circle O fifths is so I could look at this and go, cool, C, G, F, B flat. How else do we do this? We're going to go here and throw these suckers out. Well, these are our major chords, our minor chords, and then our diminished. I don't need the rest of the circle of fifths because I'm pretty much located where I need to be. I know that this is going to be my 1 chord, which is here, the F. My 2 chord is going to be my minor, G minor, right here. I know that my D minor is going to be my relative minor, my 6th chord, which is great. It's right here, D minor. I've got the A, which is my 3 chord. It's a little far away, but not too bad. A minor. Our C here is going to be the 5. Our B is going to be the 4. So here we have our C, and we've got our B flat. And then our diminished is going to be the one that's furthest away from our F. It's our E diminished. Also, a very interesting one to plot here would be right before the 3 or after the 1. This is a very common themed substitution. It's called a flat 7. In between our E and our D resides an E flat. It's a very, very, very powerful chord in all music, and I think this is where I'm going to leave us here because I have a student coming up. When we play like an F major, we have a 1, 3, 5. When we play an F major and we put in the E, we have something called a major 7. It takes that dissonance, so yucky, yucky ducky, and puts in the 3 and the 5 and turns that yucky into amazing. No matter what key you're playing this with, it will most definitely change the way that you see your chords. You can have something along the lines of having like it makes these chords which seems kind of like out there with all these dissonance and then combines them so it feels good, I think. The best part about dominant chords are that they are transition chords from one key to another. If I was playing what we're doing today, I could throw in from there my diminished chord in the key of F. It's an E diminished. When I have an E diminished, it is based off of the idea of knowing that a C major plus an E minor create a dominant 7th. Rather than a major 7th, we have a minor 7th, and these are stacked as a major 3rd, a minor 3rd, and now a minor 3rd rather than a major 3rd. This chord goes to F, and it always will. It also works well to go to D minor. But if we change that C diminished 7, sorry, incorrect phrasing, C7 or E diminished, you can choose another chord of another key, which is called a 5 dominant, and then move into that key. So if we were doing F, something along those lines. If I wanted to move away from our F major chord, let's say I wanted to move to C major. And then because I was playing the F bass with the 5, C major would have, right? It's the same melody, just in a different key. But it's abrupt to go from F and then just change to C. Even though it is in the key as the 5, we would use a common chord modulation. We would use a secondary dominant. There are multiple ways that you could use different ways to get to a different key. This is just one. So see how we went to the key of C just by using G7. G7 feels very, very much like a B diminished, and then it jumped right into another key, fulfilling the same melody and motif. Today's big takeaways is try not to stay static. When you stay static, it kind of needs to be influenced a certain way. One of the really cool key takeaways is that our notation really allows us to try different variables of thought. So we could have ha, ha, ha. When we combine them, we could have something like ha, 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 ha. Rest, rest. We could use all sorts of different notations. The idea is to try and do this every day for 5 minutes. Look at your notation, keep a notebook, and then reflect back on it. This little ditty right here, I don't know what it is. It's just it wasn't anything earlier today, and now it's something. Might take a picture of this or write it down in one of my logs, and then go back on this and try to expand upon it. Write a little longer motif with 2 periods, one being the question. Doesn't matter what you want to go to, what you feel, you will inevitably change notes and notation. And I'm at that point right now where I like to just plug in the MIDI controller and tag out a couple notes and then write a couple chords behind it, put some silly lyrics, and then boom, it's a song. Have fun with it. Show it to somebody else. If you have questions about anything we did today and or you would like to go back on any of these series and then timestamp them, please do. By timestamping, it helps another individual jump to stuff. I know I got the gift of gab. So long story short, if these weren't 45 minutes, they probably would be 15 minutes with just way too much information. I don't edit videos, which means I'm not going to be going back and taking this and making other videos from it. I'm just going to try and cover these key concepts in other videos if I'm asked about those. Otherwise, there is a plethora of different information on this YouTube channel. And then again, anything that wasn't really covered or talked about here and then it just doesn't have a great explanation, please just Google those key phrases. They will get you to a point where you go, tertiary. Great. If you look up tertiary and you start seeing how you could stack different plants in a garden, that's the wrong version of tertiary. If you get to a point where you're looking for dotted half notes and you find something that doesn't say that a dotted half note is worth 3 beats, it's wrong. The idea is when you see a nice web page that's laid out like this and has examples of this, try and do those examples. Look at the staff, figure out what the notes are, play them on your particular instrument, and regardless of what your instrument is, try to use your vocals to hum along with that. So if you're trying to do it, gives you an idea what those durations are, and it allows you to work on your vocals as well. Anyway, I really enjoyed today, as always. If you have questions or comments, put them in the comment section below. And if you have not, subscribe. Jeffrey, as always, it was good seeing you. I guess you're always like free right around 9:30, and then you pop on here and check out the channel. I love it. Gives me something to look forward to as well. Anywho, happy New Year to you, my friend. Lashana Tovim for all of us out there. Anywho, be well, be awesome, and enjoy music today.